Well, would you like the voice of God to speak to you? You know, my mentor and my meditation teacher, Mary Allen, used to say that there are two assumptions that you need to make in order to have a life that is connected with the divine. And the first is you have to assume that you're basically good, and the second is that you have to assume that there is a higher power, that there is God in you. So let's just take these as statements. I am basically good. Together. I am basically good. I have a good heart. Together. I have a good heart. And my heart is connected with the heart of God. Together. My heart is connected with the heart of God. And you just get in touch with the feeling of that. And find out that it makes a shift in how you show up in the world. There was a woman in the Youth of Unity when I was running the Youth of Unity who I got to know because she did a lot of the artwork for the Youth of Unity conferences. And then, about 12 years later, I was in ministerial school. And I was invited to be on a panel with her. She was an editor there at Unity headquarters. And the two of us were on the panel with some other people. And the topic was youth education in Unity. And they asked me to do it because I'd run the Youth of Unity. And then because they'd spent years growing up in Youth of Unity and Sunday school, things like that. And when it became her turn, she said, there's something that's all over me. And I've never told a single soul in my life what happened, but I'm going to tell you today. She said, I went to all the Youth of Unity conferences, 4 of them, and then when I was in college, I went through some really bad experiences, and there was a moment in which I was certain I was going to take my own life. And as I sat there, I asked myself, what is real? What I'm experiencing right now, or that which I remember that took place at those Youth of Unity conferences, when I felt that I was basically a good person, or I felt that I was really connected with God. And she thought about that, and then she came up with a very interesting solution. She's quite a brilliant person. She said, I asked myself, if this other assumption, this other thing could possibly be true, then why don't I give myself 6 weeks to operate from the assumption that that's the reality and this isn't true. What I'm feeling right now isn't real, that's real. And so she put away all of her plans and gave herself 6 weeks, during which time everything changed. Making the assumption she was basically a good person, not the person who was racked with guilt over her choices. Making the assumption that there was a higher power inside of her, that God was real and she was connected. And then what happened? Everything shifted. And when she was on the panel with me, she was an executive at Unity headquarters. Her life just opened up. Doors opened for her. Doors can open for you if you make the assumption, I am basically a good person. Together? I am basically a good person. I have a good heart. Together? I have a good heart. And my higher power is real. Together? My higher power is real. This is in your heart. You can feel it. And everything then can shift for you. You say, well, it's such a small thing, but it's remarkable what happens when you make a decision. God can speak to you. Not necessarily. I've never heard an audible voice, but I've had so many experiences in my life. But I know somebody who has had all kinds of experiences, including an audible voice, and her name's Jane Hart. She's my meditation teacher. She wrote the 7 Steps and the Spiritual Power Tools. And she said that when she was 4 years old, she sat on her grandmother's lap while her grandmother would play In the Garden. The old hymn In the Garden? And sing, He walks with me and He talks with me. And her grandmother was the wife of a minister. And she would play these old hymns. But that was the line that really touched her 4-year-old heart. So she said, Grandma, God's going to talk to me. And Grandma said, sure she will. Sure he will. Sorry, sure he will. And I wish she'd said the other. Sure he will. And as the years went on, she stayed with that. And she'd tell people, God's going to talk to me. But she finally reached the age where it was like, okay, we got to tell her, Santa Claus ain't real. This is just something that people in the Bible have happened to them. But you can't really expect this. What you can expect is just to be a good wife and mother. And, this is back in the 40s, the 30s and 40s. Good wife and mother, and that's not really for you to expect. So, What happened to her? Well, God did speak to her, but something happened. It wasn't the God that she had in mind in her 4-year-old mind. It was a God that was a presence and a power that was greater than any anthropomorphic deity that she had in her mind that was living up on the cloud with a beard. She got in touch through her spiritual seeking. Out of that childlike desire, that childhood desire, it opened up the doors for her. It doesn't matter where you start, but where she ended up was with a different God who spoke with her in a very different way than she anticipated. She got the experience. Now for us, right now, we can decide, I'm basically a good person. I have a higher power. That higher power is connected with me, and I can receive the communications that I need for my soul's benefit. But we say to ourselves, oh, and this is what happened to my Youth of Unity friend, oh, I'm not perfect. Have you ever heard somebody teach, especially in Unity, that you must set aside all your negative emotions and thoughts before you pray, because God cannot hear or understand those things if that's what you're doing, the negative thoughts and emotions. Have you ever heard that? Anybody hear that? You guys are so lucky, because I actually heard that, and that's not true. Jesus, before his greatest miracles, had his most negative emotions. The only negative emotion, truly negative emotion, is the one that you hold on to and marinate. He released those emotions. Before he raised Lazarus from the dead, he wept bitterly and fervently and then let it go. Before he was able to do the resurrection, he fell down on the ground with fear and felt so much fear that it said he was sweating blood, that he had that fear. And before that, he'd overturned the money changers' tables in the temple. He felt all the feelings that human beings feel. And if you look at the lives of all the people who are spiritual, they all have these experiences where it's not perfect according to human eyes. It's perfect according to a divine design. You may have heard of Joan Borisenko, the holistic health doctor. She was the head of the holistic health department for Harvard for years. And she said that the biggest assumption that we make in our culture is that we've got to have it all together. We've got to look like we have it all together. And she said because of this, she took the attitude that she was probably the only person that didn't. She said, after all my years of studying and of working on myself and meditating and doing spiritual work, I'm the only person that still has stuff that goes on inside of me. And she didn't use the word stuff. And then she realized, no, it's something that you have to accept. You have to be the observer self and observe these aspects of yourself. I'm going to teach a class on Tuesday night about this. Observing, not to run away from it, to embrace every feeling, every emotion, every thought, every consciousness state, and then move through it into the wholeness of your true being. What is your true being but wholeness? But that wholeness is, it's like it's covered over with all the negative emotions, and you've got to move with and move through all of those things in order to get into that awareness, that higher presence and power. So a wonderful quote from James Dillett Freeman, when he wrote I Am There, he had this experience before that, because he went to Unity to work when he was in college. He said if the Fillmores hadn't met him, he would have been dead by the time he was 30. And he said he'd gone through so many negative experiences. He had the worst childhood with the worst abuse of anyone that I've ever met. And 18 months before he died, we'd have lunch once a month, and he would tell me these stories, and I can't tell most of them to you. But when the Fillmores found him, and they fell in love with his poetry and offered him a job, and then he met this young woman, and he said, I tried to get away from that place over and over again, but she wouldn't let me. And they ended up marrying. And because of that, he said he found an incredible faith, but he still had a lot of imperfections. And he wrote this one time. He said, in prayer I said, oh God, why do people like me? I'm a blankety blank so-and-so. And suddenly I had a revelation. Maybe that's exactly why, Jim. The very fact that you're such an imperfect creature yourself, so full of doubt, so mixed up, that is what makes you the best messenger that I could have. You're saying to all these other people, if God can work through him, well, get busy out there. You got more on the ball than this guy does. And he really believed that. He told me, he says, people don't realize that I have so much doubt. But he worked through it. It's not being perfected. It's understanding that the perfection that you are includes all the aspects, all the attributes of your being. You know, I love the analogy of the golf ball. I found out why golf balls have dimples. Do you know why?
Why?
It's because when they were first playing golf in Scotland, they would get scuffed up. These smooth balls would get scuffed up, and they found if they were uniformly scuffed up, they'd go farther. That the actual imperfection on the golf ball is what made the golf ball go straight and far. And so they put dimples on it. They built the imperfection into the golf ball. Now, we're fortunate. We don't have to do that. We already got it. But that's what makes us go straight and far, working with the imperfection of life. It's the imperfection of life that pushes onto us and demands something of the evolution of our soul. And this is a very challenging thing. In the evolutionary journey of your soul, it's the very toughest times, like James Lloyd Freeman dealing with his first wife dying, that brings forth the greatest spiritual resources. And then he shared it with others. And there have probably been millions of people who have been affected by that gift. Many people talk about this in terms of Alcoholics Anonymous, the 12-step movement, and many people don't realize that that whole movement was not founded on people who just, were perfect from the get-go, but actually dealt with the greatest imperfections that you could imagine. They didn't just instantly get sober, which brings me to my action figure, Carl Jung. This is my Carl Jung action figure. He actually was instrumental. Oh my gosh, I just took his arm off. Well, that's perfect, isn't it? But he can move, I can do all these things. But Carl Jung was instrumental in the creation of AA. What happened was that there was a man who had gone over to Switzerland. He was very wealthy and he was an alcoholic. And Jung worked with him for a long time. For a brief time he got sober, but then he relapsed and he went back to Switzerland. And Jung just said to him, "Pal, I can't help you. Psychiatry can't help you. Only one thing can help you, and that's a spiritual experience." And then he thought, where am I going to find a spiritual experience? But then he heard about a group when he came back to the United States called the Oxford Group. And they studied basically what we call New Thought. But basically it's the practical application of spiritual principles. And there was another guy in the group who learned about this, and he got sober. And then he asked himself, who's the worst, most decrepit drunk that I know? And it was a guy named Bill Wilson. So we went to see him. And Bill Wilson found that, he offered him a drink. The guy turned him down and told him that he found spirituality. I mean, he thought the guy was a crackpot. But there was something about him. So he went with him. He'd get drunk and then go to the Oxford Group. He did this for weeks. And finally, he got to such a bad state. He was in the hospital. But he had this little glimmer in his mind. But he realized he wasn't making it on his own. And I'm just going to let his words tell you the rest of the story. He said, "My depression deepened unbearably, and finally it seemed to me as though I were at the bottom of a pit. I still gagged badly on the notion of a power greater than myself. But finally, just for the moment, the vestige of my proud obstinacy was crushed. If there is a God, let him show himself. I'm ready to do anything, anything." Suddenly the room lit up with a great white light. I was caught up into an ecstasy which there are no words to describe. It seemed to me, in the mind's eye, that I was on a mountain, and that a wind, not of air, but of spirit, was blowing. And then it burst forth on me that I was a free man. Slowly, the ecstasy subsided. I lay on the bed, but now for a time I was in another world, a world of consciousness. All about me and through me there was a wonderful feeling of presence. And I thought to myself, so this is the God of the preachers. A great peace stole over me. And I thought, no matter how wrong things seem to be, they are right. Things are all right with God and his world. Things are all right. Things weren't perfect, but he had the sense that things were all right. Why? Because he knew that he was basically good. He knew there was basically a power within himself, and he was willing, because he'd taken in what they'd been teaching at this group, he was willing to make a change in his life. Now, for each one of us, we've got to start with that basic assumption. We've got to move our concept from here to here. In my friend's case, from which one is real? Is it the feeling I'm having right now, sitting in my dorm room where I want to end my life? or those memories where I really did believe that I was a basically good person. You know, what is that God that you want to get in touch with? Jane Elizabeth Hart found out that that presence and that power wasn't that anthropomorphic deity that they taught in her church, but was so much richer and so much deeper. And that the voice she was going to experience wasn't necessarily an audible voice, but was a voice that was going to move with her, as James Miller Freeman says, a feeling and a faith. You know, Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, who was the founder of the hospice movement, she's the one who came up with the 5 stages of grief. She said that in the thousands of people that she sat with while they were dying, there were 3 types of people. You could pretty much just boil them down to 3 types. There were the people who were spiritual, there were the people who were atheists, and there were the religious wishy-washy people. Now she said the spiritual people were the people who really had that assumption. They really knew, they had that sense that they were basically good, that they were basically in touch with that higher power. The second thing, the second type of person was the person who was the atheist. And the atheist was the person who just didn't believe in anything, and they knew that when they died there was nothing. The third kind of person was the person who had the hardest time. She said that it was always a joy to sit with a spiritual person because they'd have the transcendent experiences. And they would just have these wonderful, glorious, even if it was quiet, even if it was subtle, but it was a wonderful experience with them because they were in touch with the assumption, the belief that they were basically good and they were in touch with a higher power. The atheists, she said, actually weren't all that bad to sit with. She said they made peace with the fact that they didn't believe there was anything, and they were basically okay with it because they'd made peace. She said, I imagine they're surprised when they wake up on the other side, but still, they handle it just fine. The people that have the hard time are the religious wishy-washy people, the people that believe that their higher power, they don't necessarily believe in one. They believe that there's going to be some kind of punishment for people after death. They're not sure what's going on, but it's all this outer belief. It's all done in ritual. It's done in form. It's done according to certain religious belief systems, not an inner experience. Where do you have your greatest experience of God? Where do you have that direct experience of God? For many of us, it's holding a baby. You know, the greatest experience that you can have as a spiritual being is to look into the eyes of a baby who has not been conditioned by this world. Jesus said, don't be conformed to this world, be transformed by the renewing of your mind, and don't be conformed to the conditioning of life. The baby, as you look into the baby's eyes, what you see is reflected back to you your own purity, your own presence. There is truly only one being, and that baby is expressing that to you. And not only that, when you want to take care of the baby, when you want to be present and hold the baby and meet the baby's needs, you're serving. And it is in service that we often experience our greatest connection. And this is really interesting, as people come to me and they say, how do I find my purpose in life? Or why is my life so empty and seems so meaningless? And the first thing I ask them is, what are you doing to serve others? Like serving a baby. It gives you a sense of meaning and purpose. But just something very simple like serving other people. That's why people usher. You know, this isn't Spirit of Service Sunday, but I put it out there just in case. It could be a life-transforming experience. I've seen many people who resisted this for the longest time and finally decided, no, I want to reach out to people and hug them and give them a bullet. It's a simple thing. Or maybe I want to go back to the nursery and hold the babies. That's a beautiful thing. But there's really those 2 reasons why holding the baby makes such a difference. Because that baby is present. And that innocence, that unconditioned presence, that is who you are inside. And then that second part, which is taking care of, loving, devoting, holding that baby, meeting that baby's needs. That is what transforms your experience in life. And now I know a lot of people, have you ever been in a religious argument? Can you ever win a religious argument? There's always going to be somebody who's going to theologically argue with you and whatever. But one thing you can't argue with, the experience of spirituality that you have directly. Like when you hold that baby, when you have that feeling, that presence, that power, when doors open for you, when you assume, yes, there is something there. But how often do we forget? I know I forget to ask. And this isn't a particularly profound experience, and I usually don't talk about experiences that are somewhat current in my life. I usually talk about things way in the past where it's safe. But this is something I was just thinking this morning. A few months ago, I started having numbness in the bottom of my feet. It was like somebody shot Novocaine in the bottom of my feet. And I couldn't figure out what's going on here. And I forgot to tell this at the first service, but I asked for guidance. I just said, thank you, God, for the divine solution to this perfect problem. Together? Thank you, God, for the divine solution to this perfect problem. And the words came to me, and I didn't tell them this, myelin sheath. Myelin sheath. I didn't know what that was. Well, anyway, I went to see the doctor, and they did some tests, and they said, yeah, there's a low-grade diminishment of your nerve, whatever, traveling, electrical, whatever. And so, okay, that's fine, but what causes it? They said, well, we really don't know, but usually it has something to do with toxins. Often it has to do with toxins. Toxins? You know, I'm real healthy. I mean, I drink protein, vegetable shakes in the morning and at night. Daytime I eat anything I want to, but in the morning and night I eat the healthy stuff. And you know, there's no toxins in my life. And they said, well, just think of when did it come on? And I went, oh, I started taking a nutritional supplement that was supposed to be benign and wonderful, and then I Googled it and I found out one of the side effects in many people is that they lose their nerves in the bottom of their feet. Yeah, and it's because of the myelin sheath. And it's like, oh my gosh. Now, how did that happen? It happened because I stopped and I asked, okay, what do I need to know here? You know, there's one time, and this again isn't a big profound story, but it was about 25, 30 years ago. I went to shop for CDs at a store, a record store, and I carried with me my little notebook. I have a spiral notebook that has everything in my life. Without my spiral notebook, I'm sunk. And I only lost it once in my entire life, and this was the time. It has everything in it. It also had all the lists of the CDs I wanted to buy, so I had it with me. Well, anyway, I went home and I realized I didn't have it. And I said, thank you, God, for returning my spiral notebook. And I called the store, and I remember it was the last time that I saw it, and it was there at the store. So I called them up, and they said, I'm sorry, we don't have anything in the lost and found, no such thing, you know, can't help you. So I said, okay. So I sat down again. I said, thank you, God, for the return of my notebook. This or something better. And I saw it in the mind's eye right there on the counter at the store. So I called them back. I said, are you sure? And they said, no, we've looked everywhere for it, and oh my gosh, I'm looking right at it. They left it there at the counter, and there they had it. Now, in your life, when in your life is that all-knowing mind going to answer you, is going to guide you to what it is you need to do, is going to move you in the direction you need, and although the voice of God doesn't usually, and I've never experienced it, speak audibly, taking something like I am there, which was truly a divine experience, and internalizing and realizing it's the voice of God inside of you, and then opening up to that presence and that power. We opened up a space in our service this morning by saying that together. And we're going to go into prayer right now, but this time we're going to take the energy and the life and the vibration that we created by saying I am there together, and we're going to just take whatever it is that's on our minds and our hearts, and we're not going to read the I am there. We're just going to take the energy that we feel. Just get in touch with the feeling of life in your hands, in your fingertips. Get in touch with the feeling of life inside of you. There's a life inside of your body. You are alive. There's a life that's all around you. You are shining. If you wish, you can get quiet and just feel that tingling. Become aware of it. And now just say, thank you, God, for the divine solution to my perfect problem. Silently. and then just move into a space without thought. And we just say, thank you, God, for the divine solution to this perfect problem. Thank you, God, for a divine idea. Thank you that it's coming to us under grace, and that we're being moved through, and we're moving in divine order. Thank you, God. And so it is. Amen. He said that there was only one time in his life. He told me this when I was 19 and I spent a date with him. He said there's only one time in his life when he heard an audible voice. And it was in response to his deed when his first wife was dying of cancer, and he was told that she only had a short time to live. And he went into the chapel of the hospital there in Kansas City and just was desperate. He was at the lowest point, and he just prayed. He said, help me, just help me. And he had the experience, only time in his life, of hearing an audible voice. And luckily he had a pen and there was a back of an envelope, and he wrote down these words. And when we're finished singing our meditation song, we're actually going to experience this by reading it aloud together. Now, I know you might ask, well, what does this do for me to read somebody's poem? But Freeman was real clear, it wasn't his. It came through him, and it came in the time of a need. And if this was given to him, well, he thought it was just for him personally, but it was much later that he shared it with a friend of his who was in need, and they said, you've got to get this published, Jim. And so he published it in Unity, and it actually was taken to the moon by one of the astronauts. And powerful. It probably has been printed over 1 million times. It's helped many people. And if it was there for him, it's there for you. If it's the voice of God through him, it's the voice of God through you. And as you speak it aloud, you'll get to experience. I'm going to ask that you take a nice deep breath and let it out. As we take a moment to reflect on the words of James Dillard Freeman's poem, I Am There, we remember that this wasn't a poem, but it was an answer to a real need. And although he said he only heard an audible voice once in his life, the voice that gave him these words, there was a spirit that was expressing through him that came through in his time of greatest need in his life. And it wasn't just speaking through him. It's speaking to each one of us and through us as we connect with that same presence and power that was there in 1949 in that little room in the hospital. We recognize that everywhere we are, God is. There's no separation between us and him, between us and that time, between us and God. And so as you speak these words, we'll take them slowly, reverent, aloud with me. Realize that these words are the voice of the Spirit of God speaking through you in this moment. Together. Do you need me? I am there. You cannot see me, yet I am the light you see by. You cannot hear me, yet I speak through your voice. You cannot feel me, yet I am the power at work in your hands. I am at work, though you do not understand my ways. I am at work, though you do not recognize my works. I am not strange visions. I am not mysteries. Only in absolute stillness, beyond self, can you know me as I am, and then but as a feeling and a faith. Yet I am there. yet I hear, yet I answer. When you need me, I am there. Even if you deny me, I am there. Even when you feel most alone, I am there. Even in your fears, I am there. Even in your pain, I am there. I am there when you pray and when you do not pray. I am in you and you are in me. Only in your mind can you feel separate from me, for only in your mind are the mists of yours and mine. Yet only with your mind can you know me and experience me. Empty your heart of empty fears. When you get yourself out of the way, I am there. You can of yourself do nothing, but I can do all, and I am in all. Though you may not see the good, good is there, for I am there. I am there because I have to be, because I am. Only in me does the world have meaning. Only out of me does the world take form. Only because of me does the world go forward. I am the law on which the movement of the stars and the growth of living cells are founded. I am the love that is the law's fulfilling. I am assurance. I am peace. I am oneness. I am the law that you can live by. I am the love that you can cling to. I am your assurance. I am your peace. I am one with you. I am. Though you fail to find me, I do not fail you. Though your faith in me is unsure, my faith in you never wavers, because I know you, because I love you. Beloved, I am there. Feel this. Thank you, God, that your presence speaks to us, not just through these words, but through a feeling and a faith. And we assume and we know the truth of our being, that we are children of God. God is in our heart, and we have a good heart. We're good people. And we are connected with you, our higher power. Our heart, our good heart, is connected with your heart. Thank you, God. And so it is. Amen. Statement is, I give from the rich being that I am, and I receive abundantly. Together. I give from the rich being that I am, and I receive abundantly. And silently. And again aloud together. I give from the rich being that I am, and and I receive abundantly, and so it is. Amen.